Alright, YouTube, today we're going to be working on lighting still. I've got another light similar to the one that we just did the diffuser for, but I don't have the bell on it. The problem I have with this light is this cord is just way too heavy, so it keeps knocking stuff over on my bench and everything else. I need to just lighten it up a little bit, so we're gonna change this cord out for just another littler one like that. Okay, first things first, let's take this guy apart. This here isn't really part of the light, it's just an attachment so it can clip onto things. We're going to set that off there, take that off. Set those aside. And it looks like, man, this is some really old wiring here. But all I did was just push that a little bit through and the end bevel comes off. It's a little heat shield, and looks like it's soldered in there. They really knew how to make things right back in the day, didn't they? So instead of going through all the trouble of soldering it, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut it, and we'll use a little bit of the old wire to attach the new one to. So I'm just going to snip that one off and set it aside. And we've got just a little bit of the old wiring still left in there, so let's pull the insulation off. And you notice we've only got 2 wires. That's all there ever is inside a normal light bulb. It's all it takes. It's just the hot wire coming in and the neutral wire going out. The hot, of course, is the black, and the white is always neutral. That's a industry standard across the board. It works for lights, it works for electrical outlets. Usually the only other wire that you'll see in any of those is a green one is the color code for the ground wire, and this old bulb doesn't have one. Most lights and things don't. So all we're working with is just the hot wire and the neutral. So we're going to just strip off a little bit of the coating around both of those wires. You know, careful not to cut into the wires themselves, because you don't want to lose any of the strands when you're doing this. Just going to cut off the very ends of them, so we've got a little bit of the copper wires coming out the ends, and I'm just going to twist them just to make sure that they're nice and tight and all together. Just real simple like that. We need to get the other cord ready. This is just a smaller, thinner cord. Nothing special about it. I'm just going to use this because it's going to be a lot easier to move that light around. So first thing I'm going to do is just, and this is just one of those little 2-prong cords that you use for, oh, I don't know, the transformers for a video game or for printers or whatever. So we don't need that end. I'm just going to snip it off. And you'll see there's, again, only 2 wires. So all I'm doing here, trying not to cut the wires inside, but you see where this groove is. I just need to separate these out a little bit, so I'm just going to cut right between the 2 wires. That lets me pull them apart like that. And on these I'm going to strip these down too, just like that. Okay, for our purposes today, just going over the real simple options that you have for changing a cord on a light socket. Of course, there's numerous ways of reattaching these. Like I was explaining seconds ago, the old wires are actually soldered. I mean, ideally, if you wanted to really take your time and do the right way, I guess some people would say, you would desolder them and resolder the new ones into the holes where those ones are. Of course, there's numerous different ways of attaching two wires together. You know, you can go get these little wire couplers and things from wherever, Harbor Freight or whatever hardware store you've got close to you. You can use those, of course. Or you can just fall back to the easiest of them all, electrical tape. That's going to be the easiest way of fixing this. And because we're using such a low wattage LED bulb in this socket, this would be completely acceptable way of doing it. It's just a lot easier than having, if you don't have a soldering iron, you don't have all the resources that some people have, roll of electrical tape comes in real handy. One of the things that I'm sure everybody's wondering on these cords, there's a white and a black coming out of the light socket. There's not a white and a black on the cord. They're both just black. Well, on most electrical cords, I'd say just about every two-prong electrical cord, you're going to have two different wires. One is going to be completely smooth coating, and there's going to be one that's got a little set of ridges that run the whole length of the thing all the way down. And generally on those, you're going to see a plug that has two different sizes of there wouldn't mind one light. I'll have to plug that back in. But you'll see, like on this one, there's going to be two different sizes of prongs. There's going to be a wide prong and there's going to be a skinny prong. And if you follow on that, the wide prong is going to have the little ridges on the cord itself. There's little tiny ridges right here. On this side, it's completely smooth. You can't see that on here, but if you've ever held a power cord, you know what I'm talking about. So the wide end is going to be on the ridged side, and that's always going to be your neutral. In here, when we're talking about the black and whites, again, like I said earlier, the white is your neutral. So you want to take the end of your new wire that has the little ridges, and you want to make sure that that wire goes on to the neutral end of the socket. So we're gonna start there, and we're going to just grab a little bit of electrical tape. And most people have their own ways of wrapping wires. Some people just take them and twist them around, and that's probably the most widely used method. You just put them together like that and twist them together, and they will stay just fine like that. And then folding them over in one direction or the other helps with the aesthetics a little bit. So just like that, real simple, nothing fancy about it. Take a piece of electrical tape and wrap heavily around each one. Take another one for the other side. Make sure you're covering all the connection So don't be afraid to use too much electrical tape. I mean, you don't need to go overboard. Just make sure that it's completely wrapped with more than one layer. And basically you've got your completed connection. Now, just as an example, even without putting it back in the bell housing, you can go ahead and put that down. I just want to show you that it's working the way it should. There it is. It's working, and like I said, this LED bulb doesn't put out any heat hardly at all. And I mean, you can hold on to this thing for a long time and it doesn't put out any heat. So that's the easiest way of changing the cord on a light socket.